Hello, and welcome to this walking tour of Stratford-upon-Avon. Stratford-upon-Avon is a historic town in Warwickshire, England. The town is best known as the birthplace of William Shakespeare, one of the most famous playwrights in history. The town was founded more than 800 years ago, and the name Stratford comes from the Old English words strait, which means street or Roman road, and ford, which is a shallow river crossing. The town developed along the River Avon and became an important market town in medieval times. In the 16th and 17th centuries, Stratford grew as a centre of trade. Many of the beautiful half-timbered buildings you can see today were built during this time. The town's location on the river helped businesses like farming, tanning and brewing to succeed. Today, it's famous for its connection to Shakespeare. Every year, thousands of visitors come here to see the places where he lived and to watch plays performed by the Royal Shakespeare Company. We are now walking along Henley Street, one of the oldest and most famous streets in Stratford-upon-Avon. It is best known as the location of Shakespeare's birthplace, the house where William Shakespeare was born in 1564 and spent his early years. The house is a well-preserved example of a 16th century timber-framed home. There's a statue of Shakespeare on Henley Street. This was unveiled in 2020 and was installed to celebrate his legacy and to provide a focal point for tourists walking along Henley Street. It was created by James Butler, who is a renowned sculptor known for his public monuments. In Shakespeare's time, Henley Street was a busy area with shops and businesses. His father, John Shakespeare, was a glove maker and wool merchant, and he ran his trade from their family home. Today, the house is a museum where visitors can learn about Shakespeare's early life and see original artefacts from his time. Henley Street is now a popular pedestrianised area lined with shops, cafes and sometimes street performers. It's one of the busiest parts of Stratford, attracting tourists from all over the world. Another notable building on Henley Street is the Shakespeare Centre, which is located next to Shakespeare's birthplace. This building is the headquarters of the Shakespeare's Birthplace Trust. It houses exhibitions, research materials and visitor information about Shakespeare's life and works. There are 4 places that you can visit in Stratford-upon-Avon that are all connected with William Shakespeare and his life. So first we have the Shakespeare Centre, which is located right next to Shakespeare's birthplace. A little bit further off, but still in Stratford, you have Shakespeare's New Place, which is open seasonally, and then a short half-hour walk away you have Anne Hathaway's cottage. If you want to visit these places, you will need to buy a ticket. The best value ticket costs £27 for an adult, and that gives you entry to all 4 places. Plus, the ticket lasts for a year, so within that time period you can visit these places as many times as you like. If you book online, it is cheaper at only £24.30. William Shakespeare is one of the most famous playwrights in the whole world, and it's a bit of a rite of passage for students in England to study at least one of his works at school. He was born in Stratford-upon-Avon in 1564. It's thought that he lived here until around 1585 when he moved to London. It's believed that he spent roughly 20 years in London, where he became a prominent playwright and actor, before returning to Stratford in the early 1600s. Over his lifetime, he wrote 39 plays, 154 sonnets, and several other poems. His works cover a wide range of genres, from tragedies like Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet, to comedies like A Midsummer Night's Dream and Much Ado About Nothing. His influence on the English language is massive. Many phrases and words we still use today come from his writing. He died in 1616, but his work has endured for over 400 years. When I visited, they were putting on performances of some extracts from some of Shakespeare's works.
What cannot you and I perform unto the unguarded donkey? Yeah. What not but upon his spongy officers who will bear the guilt of our great wealth?
Bring forth men, children only, for thy undaunted metal should compose nothing but males.
We now step into the house which is Shakespeare's birthplace. John Shakespeare, the father of William Shakespeare, lived and worked here. He married Mary Arden in around 1557, and William Shakespeare was born in 1564 as the third of their 8 children. In 1568, John, the father, was elected as the High Bailiff of Stratford, the town's highest office. Thanks to his father's position as mayor, William had the opportunity to attend the local grammar school for his education. When he was 18 in 1582, William Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway. The couple continued to live in his childhood home with his parents, where their children, Susanna, Judith, and Hamnet, were born. John Shakespeare passed away in 1601, and as the eldest surviving son, William inherited the family home. He rented out the small adjoining cottage to his sister, Joan Hart, while the main house was also leased and converted into an inn named the Maidenhead. It was later renamed the Swan and Maidenhead Inn and remained in operation until 1847. After William's death in 1616, the property was passed on to his eldest daughter, Susanna, and upon her death it went to her only child, Elizabeth. Despite being married twice, Elizabeth had no children, and when she passed away in 1670, the house was inherited by a descendant of Joan Hart. The Hart family owned it until 1806, when it was sold to a butcher named Thomas Court. Following the death of his widow, the entire property was put up for sale in 1846. To preserve this birthplace of William Shakespeare, a public campaign, backed by Charles Dickens, was launched, and in 1847 the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust purchased the property at auction for only £3,000. The house and its contents are really nicely preserved and set out, and there is lots of information. There's also some very friendly guides, often one in each room, and they are always happy to answer any questions you might have. There is a lovely gift shop at Shakespeare's birthplace, which sells lots of his works, as well as books for children and other souvenirs. This commemorative clock tower, incorporating horse troughs and a drinking fountain, was dedicated to William Shakespeare, but as its inauguration in 1887 coincided with Queen Victoria's Jubilee, that too was commemorated. Back on Henley Street, this cute and traditional sweet shop claims to be the best sweet shop in Stratford. It's been a family-run business for over 100 years and produces the finest quality traditional sweets. Going in here is like taking a trip down memory lane, as this is how sweets used to be sold in the olden days. After exploring Shakespeare's birthplace and the town of Stratford-upon-Avon, it was time to take the short walk of about half an hour to get to Anne Hathaway's cottage. This involved walking to the village of Shottery, which is now actually a part of the town of Stratford itself. The local park, Shottery Fields, contains 2 football pitches and a children's play area. The fields retain distinctive ditch and furrow undulations, which marks a medieval field system, but these can only be seen when the sun is low across the fields. Shottery was the childhood home of Anne Hathaway, William Shakespeare's wife, and it is now known as the location of the building known as Anne Hathaway's cottage, which is a very popular tourist destination, even though the authenticity of the building as the home of Anne Hathaway is not credited by Shakespearean scholars. It's quite a picturesque walk through Shottery, and you go past the only pub in the village, which is called the Bell Inn, which is where I had lunch later on. Anne Hathaway's cottage is very picturesque, and it's where Anne Hathaway, William Shakespeare's future wife, spent her childhood. It's a stunning example of a traditional English country home with a thatched roof, beautiful gardens, and timber-framed walls. The cottage dates back to around 1463, making it over 550 years old. Anne's family were farmers, and it's believed that Anne's father, Richard Hathaway, lived here with his children. The cottage was passed down through the generations and was eventually inherited by Anne and her siblings. Anne Hathaway and William Shakespeare were married in 1582, when Anne was 26 and Shakespeare was only 18. The couple had 3 children together, and Shakespeare later left Anne and their children behind in Stratford while he moved to London to pursue his writing career. Inside the cottage, you can see how Anne and her family would have lived, with period furniture and household items that reflect 16th century life. The cottage also contains fascinating details about William and Anne's relationship, offering a glimpse into the personal side of the famous playwright. The cottage is set in lovely gardens, which include a range of flowers, plants, and trees that would have been typical of the time. The surroundings provide a peaceful scenic spot to reflect on the early life of Anne Hathaway. The cottage is typically open year-round, though opening hours may vary, so you should always check on the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust website. You can purchase tickets when you get there, or you can buy them online in advance. Of course, you can always buy a combined ticket, like I mentioned before, which allows you to visit the other Shakespeare-related attractions. The cottage has some uneven surfaces and some steep stairs, so it might be quite difficult to access if you have mobility issues. The site includes a cafe, and there's also a gift shop. Stratford-upon-Avon is a very nice place just to wander around and admire the old buildings. It's very easy to get to. It's well connected by both road and rail. It's about a 2-hour drive from London, so it's an easy day trip, or you can go there for a weekend. And if you're travelling by train, the station there is serviced by trains from London Marylebone, Birmingham and other major cities. There are also bus and coach services. Most major attractions here are within walking distance of each other, and quite a bit of it in the centre of town is pedestrianised. If you prefer not to walk, there are buses and taxis, and you can also rent bikes or take a boat trip along the River Avon. There is a visitor centre located near the Royal Shakespeare Theatre, which is a great place to pick up maps, guides, and information about local attractions, events, and tours. There's lots of choice of accommodation, but it can get very busy, especially during the summer and during Shakespeare's birthday weekend, which is April the 23rd. By this stage in my visit, it was actually raining, so I wandered around the picturesque streets, and then I found this antique shop which had actually been recommended to me by a friend as a nice place to spend some time browsing and keeping out of the rain. Chapel Street is where Shakespeare's new place is located, which is one of the 4 attractions that are Shakespeare related here in Stratford. Shakespeare's new place is one of the most significant sites in Stratford-upon-Avon, related to the life of William Shakespeare. Although there's no longer a physical building here, New Place was once the home where Shakespeare spent his final years. He bought New Place in 1597, and it became his family home. The large house was a symbol of his success, and he lived here for the last 19 years of his life. It was here that he wrote some of his later plays, including The Tempest. In 1759 it was demolished, but in its place a lovely garden has been created, and it offers visitors a peaceful setting with statues, interactive displays, and a sense of the home's former grandeur. It's only open seasonally, and when I went to Stratford-upon-Avon, unfortunately it was closed. The Guild Chapel is one of Stratford-upon-Avon's most historic buildings. It was originally built in the 13th century and later rebuilt in the 15th century. Inside, the chapel is home to stunning medieval wall paintings. These include a large Doom painting, which shows the Last Judgment. However, during the Reformation in the 16th century, such religious artwork was considered inappropriate and the paintings were covered with whitewash. They remained hidden for centuries until they were rediscovered in the 20th century. Now we're walking past Shakespeare's School, formerly known as King's New School. This historic school is where William Shakespeare is believed to have received his early education. He likely attended this school from around the age of 7 to 14, and he would have been introduced to works by ancient authors like Virgil, Ovid, and Cicero, all of which had a lasting influence on his own writing. The building itself is an impressive example of Elizabethan architecture. In recent years, the school has been open to visitors and has become a place where you can learn more about Shakespeare's education and the environment that shaped him as a young writer. Next, I walked to visit Holy Trinity Church, which is the final resting place of William Shakespeare. The church dates back to the 13th century and is a stunning example of Gothic architecture. It is where Shakespeare was baptised in 1564 and buried in 1616. Shakespeare's grave is located near the altar and you have to pay to be able to see it, although it's free to enter the church itself. On the grave there's an inscription written by Shakespeare himself, which famously warns against moving his bones. Visitors come from all over the world to pay their respects to the playwright, and the church has a quiet, reflective atmosphere. It is set in beautiful grounds near the River Avon, and its tranquil location makes it a perfect place to reflect on the lasting impact of Shakespeare's life and works. From the church, you can walk along the river back into Stratford-upon-Avon. The river played a key role in trade and transport during the medieval period and helped Stratford grow as a market town. If you walk along the river, you will get to the Royal Shakespeare Theatre, which sits right on the riverbank, and there are lots of productions of Shakespeare's plays here every year. Once you get back into the centre of Stratford-upon-Avon, you will come to the canal there, which is a waterway that winds its way from Birmingham to Stratford, stretching over 25 miles with 54 locks along the route. It was built in 1816 and was once vital for carrying coal and timber between the Midlands and the River Avon. Today it is no longer used for that, obviously, but it has been restored for nature and for leisure use. Also here you can find the Gower Memorial, which is an important statue that commemorates William Shakespeare's life and works. It was unveiled in 1888 and is located in the Bancroft Gardens near the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. It shows Shakespeare seated, surrounded by figures representing some of his most famous plays, such as Hamlet and Macbeth. I hope you found this video interesting and useful. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!